The focus on Insight on Discussion segment today is the Nigerian Labour Congress. Some opinions say the Nigerian Labour Congress has three faces in Nigeria. So far, so good. NLC Nigeria is celebrating 40 years of existence. Which of the faces are we going to look at? Ultimately, it's the 40 years of NLC, but we'll get to know which phase and how did it get to just celebrating 40 years as huge as NLC sounds and appears. I have on set to discuss this the incumbent and current General Secretary of Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Dr. Peter Ozonyeson. Thanks for joining me on Insight.
Thank you very much.
And first General Secretary of the NLC, Comrade Aliyu Dangiwa. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, our focus is NLC at 40, but let us just give a breakdown to where we are. From the records, I see NLC somewhere in 1950, NLC somewhere in 1975, NLC somewhere in 1978. That's three phases. First NLC, second NLC, third NLC.
Yes.
So what is this picture all about?
Well, like you said, there are three phases of the Nigeria Labour Congress. But what we are celebrating today is the birth of the third phase, which took place in 1978. Actually, the processes that led to that birth it started slightly before that date, because just before then, there had been 4 different centers, labor centers in the country. And it was mutually agreed among these 4 centers the need to form a united center. And it is that was that culminated in the Ibadan conference of February 28th, 1978, which is therefore leading us to mark the 40 years of existence of NLC in this present form. Historically before, like you said, you're right, there was in the 50s NLC, and then it ceased to exist. And then in 1975, then again, through interventions, it was proscribed or disbanded. And we then had this mutually agreed. But after the 4 centers had mutually agreed, the then military government of the Obasanjo regime, Murtala Obasanjo, chose to then formalize it through a decree. So although some historians will look at the official records of government and say the government midwifed and gave birth to the United NLC of 1978, we insist that it was the voluntary coming together of the 4 centers and therefore workers that gave birth to that conference, and that then produced the United NLC, which it was 40 years today.
So we are looking at NLC effective February 28, 1978.
Yes, sir.
To date, 40 years.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. I'm so happy that we have 2 faces of NLC here. The pioneer General Secretary and you, the incumbent. Now, looking at it, 79 to 84, Hassan Somono, Alice Chiroma, 1984 to 1988, Pascal Bafere, 1988 to 1994, Adams Oshomole, 1999 to 2007, Omar Abdul Wahid, 2007 to 2015. Ayuba Waba is incumbent. Yes. So, what a wonderful ride. Then and now, what will you say has been the picture? Will you say NLC has really been there? Through thick and thin?
Definitely. Clearly, when you look at the periods of each regime, is a demonstration of the fact that NLC has always been a purely democratic body. it's been a democratic organization, living it up until today. And to some extent, there has been some, if you like, coordination within the Congress. Definitely, when you look at these regimes and the development of events during all this time until now, you can see that there has been close relationship between each and all of them, and that is largely based on that democratic factor that, and before election, there has been sufficient consultation and establishment of clear understanding that we are choosing the best under circumstances. That's how, up to today, each one of them can be seen to have done a whole lot for the Congress, and to a large extent kept it intact until today.
Okay, but sometime, somewhere, government influence came into NLC.
Mm-hmm.
You said NLC remains democratic, but it got to a period where if it is time for a new election, apart from the general secretary who is not going to contest, he's the administrative head, there will always be a government hand in NLC. When did this picture come in?
Well, I think that...
and the very recent one was what we never saw before.
Yes.
Within an NLC picture where an election held and nothing happened. There was a mild drama,
yes.
so rescheduled and came over crisis. When did this happen?
Well,
As
government
democratic as
has
NLC
always,
could be,
government has always had an interest in wanting to determine who emerged in the leadership of the NLC. That did not start today. There are times in which it even tacitly sponsored candidates. There are times in which it nullified election based on its unhappiness that its own candidate did not emerge. Then I don't think that is surprising, because you see, given the historical role that the NLC had come to play, particularly under the military, when there were no democratic parties in opposition, and that matter fell, as it were, on the NLC. Governments have been always seeking to ensure that they weakened or undermined the capacity of the NLC to check its own function, to check the activities of government. And therefore, it was always in the government's self-interest to find an amiable or an acceptable candidate. But the democratic nature of the NLC, which Comrade Dangewa referred to, has always ensured that no matter what the government did, it is the wish of the workers themselves that has always triumphed. And that is why when that has happened at times, government may come in and say, no, we nullify this or we ban this and we do all that, including even passing a decree that banned 11 people by name for life from even seeking positions and all that. So that is part of the, I think it should be understood within the framework of the role of the NLC in posing counter options to government. Okay. And therefore government has always sought to be inclusive. You're right that in some of, we've seen the hands of government in some of the crises that we have had. You talk of the last conference, for instance. Everybody a discerning person knew that they were. I don't want to go into details. I was summoned as General Secretary by some government agencies prior to that conference. trying to insist on one candidate or the other. And we told them clearly that that was not their business. And so whatever they then did behind the scene to cause the confusion or to ensure that things did not go well, ultimately the will of the workers prevailed.
Okay.
And we think that that is what is important.
That leads me to this. There came a time, if you hear of a comrade, they were revered at the state level, at the local government level, at the national level. There were names when we hear them. And that leads me to this, that trade unionism is a call. The unionists must choose who to serve, for he or she cannot serve the worker and the employer at the same time. He must always be loyal to the worker. There's a school of thought, there's an opinion poll that give and take, the NLC is not as firm as it used to be given this. Do you think that still plays out now?
Well, I don't quite know about now, because I've been a little off.
You can give us a picture then.
Okay. Really, this has got some historical background. Certainly, government is the largest employer of labor. So it must be naturally interested in it has got its own rules and regulations, conditions of service. But then the failings therein, the implementation of these conditions, leads to agitations. And the union takes care of that. Now, there are some that government feels are insignificant, while they really are not. They are as significant as any other. So that's what really, leads to government's wish to intervene, directly or indirectly. And of course, when there is a leader that, has, if you like, sympathy for the government position, you can see how workers can suffer. And that is what is not acceptable in the labor movement. Such a case, I don't want to mention names, but of recent, we know that after Comrade Ali Chiroma, something happened around this phase. But it did not succeed. It did not succeed. And that is what, if you like, makes labor beat its chest that, look, we've been on and on, real on. Attempts have been made to infiltrate. They've been checked effectively. And this is what we want to see continuing all along. There has been some kind of a slumber of recent. But now, really, with Comrade President Ayuba Oba is coming back. It's simple and straightforward. The Congress is there to protect, defend, and promote the rights and privileges of workers. Is doing nothing more than that. Okay. Why not? Occasionally, that hurts employers. Now, for instance, you see, initially, labor had problem of finance and organization. Well, naturally, organization costs, and the money is not there. That's how eventually compulsory checkoff came up.
Okay.
It was accepted. And to sell it, we really had to go around. Some industries would not accept it. Some workers were deliberately confused to refuse to accept it. And a lot has had to be done to get it through. And now, thank goodness, it's become history.
Okay. So, as a follow-up, sir, when did that impression on the workers? These days, if Labour says we go on maybe peaceful demonstration with down tools, the first impression is, oh, they want to use us to get money from government. But there came a time if Labour says it is down tools, work to rule, we are going on the street, we are going on solidarity, everybody is mobilized. When did that picture come and how could it be shaped? It's a major concern.
Well, you see, I think some of these are at times overemphasized. Well, at least the time even in recent times, Labour has called, and it's the nature of the struggle itself, the issue of the moment that determines, the coalition that then goes around there. We had these years of protest over deregulation, oil price and all that. And whenever Labour called, people came out, Nigerians came out, because this was something that impacted directly on them. Yes, we then had a situation in the last price hike in which Labour called, and people did not come out. Or many people, some did, but very few. And which needs to understand that within the Nigerian politics. Because people who helped to mobilize, even political figures who helped to mobilize, the last major one under President Jonathan that locked the country down for a long time. We are now in this government, and we are not ready to play the same role that they played before. For us, we have never called on political grounds. We do not care which political power. It is the policy that we are protesting. So if we protested the price hike under Jonathan or under Obasanjo, we also felt it was correct to do the same under President Buhari. But people politicized it. Instead, we even saw in Abuja, some people were recruited carrying party flags and carrying sticks wanting to attack the procession. So the question is not just for Labour. The question is for Nigerians. Do they rally and protest bad policies because they are bad? Or do they rally and protest policies because those policies are initiated by particular political parties? For Labour, we want to be neutral, and we want to focus on the policies. And we think that Nigerians need themselves to re-examine themselves, their own consciences, and then take positions, not on partisan basis, but on the issues of the moment. So I think that the ability of Labour to then call, we have no doubt that today, if it becomes necessary to call a general strike over, for instance, the minimum wage, which is something that affects our workers, we have no doubt that workers will respond, that they will down tools. So the problem has not been within the workers. It has been when we are dealing with protestation over national policies that go beyond just the workers and the response of Nigerians.
Okay. I remember when this current administration under President Buhari resumed office and kept anti-corruption in the front burner. NLC, in support of the government, did a protest to the National Assembly to say they are mobilizing workers. And in one of the municipal reviews, I remember I did a review and I said, I would have expected NLC to maybe call a conference to reorientate the mindset of the worker on the need to join the anti-corruption of government crusade by saying work ethics to change, not to go on the street. Now the picture is, there's a mindset by the worker against the leadership of Labour. Now, as NLC marks 40, can you give a reassurance so they depart from that mindset and do a rejig to tie up from what Peter just said?
Certainly. You know, as stated, there are issues that are of national nature. And somehow, as it is, NLC has become a household name that people, particularly the underdogs, simply believe that NLC can do anything. And if it does not, they feel aggrieved. And that's when the political aspect chips in to, if you like, well, do what should not be done, to say the least. All right? If, for instance, you take the latest petroleum. Now, you can see that that did not require convention of a meeting to say, what shall we do?
Okay, just to interject, he has touched on that. My concern from you is, what should the workers do now? He has explained that.
Okay.
How can the workers' mindset change
Yeah.
towards a positive posture with labor?
Okay. This way. Really, even yesterday and the day before, it has been clarified that fundamentally, labor needs to mobilize. And you and I know what mobilization involves from the point of awareness, promotion, and all that. As it is, it was, or it has been rather, the lack of this kind of mobilization that led to the swaying of some elements. Plus, we believe some political aspects involved. But with greater mobilization, they will quickly find their way back. Okay. I'm telling you, they will come back.
Okay.
And apologize with apology.
Okay.
Thereafter, it's clear that as things are going, there is need for, if you like, new agenda.
Okay.
For Congress.
Okay.
You remember the
okay, there's a lot of politics now in within
right.
NLC, given
right.
interest factor like he has explained. We'll get to that, but quickly, a lot of goodwill message. Our focus is 40 years of NLC, but we cannot discuss it without going to these corners and trying to pick here and there. A lot of goodwill messages from the governors, from the tiers of government, the arms of government, and two clear ones I want to take here before I give my question. The NLC president said Labour will continue to protect the interest of Nigerian worker through viable engagements with the public and the private sector's employers. And Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, in his goodwill message and congratulatory message to NLC at 40, NLC, he wished them well at 40 and reassured the Nigerian worker that his administration will continue to work towards inclusive economy that adequately caters for them and their families. That leads me to the most expected. There's a committee on the review of minimum wage arising from recent developments, recession, though the country has come out of recession, and the federal government set up a committee on that. So now that you're celebrating 40 years, did you have this in the picture? How far, how well are we going with this? Though the committee has not submitted its report, but do you think through the horse trading going on now, it will end up somewhere favorable for workers in Nigeria?
Well, we are determined that we will end up with something favorable and somewhere favorable to Nigerian workers. Whether government is committed to doing the same is for government to say. For us in the NLC, if we will do and mobilize workers to ensure that this matter is conclusively addressed. And if you look back, 1981 forward, all the minimum wages that have been done have not been done without some struggle. National strikes have had to be called at times to force negotiation. And in other cases, national strike or threat of national strike had to be there to force implementation. So in the present circumstance, what is clear is that now that the tripartite committee is working, we are members of that tripartite committee. If we see any sense of dragging, any sense of delay, any sense of trying to just use the committee as a delay tactics, we will return to our principals, who are the workers, and we do not rule out the possibility that we would need to also use the same type of struggle that we have used in the past to ensure that this happens. Okay. And we are not going to rest until the present minimum wage review is concluded and workers have something favorable.
So you're still working within the timeline?
Well, yes, we're working within a timeline. To put this in perspective, we met at the tripartite committee, and a proposal was brought that would have ended the work of the committee in next year, 2019. And right on the table, we had to say, no, this was not tenable. And the work program was then adjusted such that we said we need that the minimum wage be in place by the end of August this year. This may even appear long, and we will struggle to see if the work of the committee can be faster. But we recognize that there are certain things that are done within the tripartite committee work that usually take time. Studies are commissioned. There would be a review of various submissions that will be done on the table. There will be a survey that will be commissioned that will look at small and medium scale enterprises and others. And in order to come up with something that is scientifically based, because we're not just going to say this is it and this is it.
Okay, still on use that. There's an angle that bothers people most times. There's struggle for minimum wage, I beg your pardon. Public, private sector.
Yes.
Federal, state, local government.
Yes.
Is all this captured?
Of course. You see, the concept of a national minimum wage is the concept of a wage.
Because a situation where the minimum wage is paid,
yes,
the states will tell you we can't pay.
Well,
local government will say we can't pay.
Yes.
The banks, the private sector will say they can't pay.
Yes.
So are you factoring this so that by the time the minimum wage takes off,
yes,
if granted the committee that
yes,
is between labor and government works?
That is why the committee is a tripartite one. Government is represented, and when I say government, not just the federal government, okay, state governments are represented. Never mind the denials that some state governors made in relation to the 2011 minimum wage, because they were represented. Some of them, rather than attend, sent some officers and they attended. They were asked to make submissions, and they made.
So we hope that this one will have a different picture.
Each zone is represented by a governor. In the present one, 6 governors are there. Private sector is adequately represented.
So everybody's been streamed.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when you end up adopting something, you cannot come back and say, oh, we cannot. Because ability to pay is the argument they can bring to the table before we agree on a figure.
Okay. Back to Comrade Dangiwa. Mm-hmm. So moving forward, NLC at 40, they say life begins at 40. Mm-hmm. So what are your expectations, and maybe as not a retired comrade, very active comrade now. I'm happy Comrade Dr. Peter Ozoeson is here. I'm sure there are several times he will call you, say, this situation, how are you handling it? I can be sure you do that. Mm. So what's your expectation moving on, NLC, after 40 years?
Well, as it is, at 40, a fool at 40, it's a fool for whatever. You know, so definitely Congress has attained a level, appreciable level of maturity now. And that is why it became clear that the need has arisen for mobilization, and in the light of what's happening within the framework of the existing circumstances, situations, the need for NLC's agenda comes in, chips in. And this is going to be done. That's one. Now, with this agenda, with reference to President Buhari's offer that the government will, you can see the need for the government to work together with NLC at that National Economic Council level to harmonize, the proposals, if you like, and greater understanding of how the final decisions will be effectively implemented. Okay. So it is under circumstances that Congress must be aware that the need has also arisen for identifying within itself the capable hands that can really effectively participate in such situations and lead towards the realization of the required results for Nigerian workers to enjoy.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the assumption is there are a lot of intrigues within Labour, politics within Labour, horse trading within Labour. You are the saddle as a General Secretary of NLC currently, and what is that your vision, which I believe is on a mission, at the end of your tenure when you leave NLC as General Secretary? What is that picture you have about NLC as you wrap up?
Well, I think that I look forward to an NLC that would be a continuing force, not just in negotiating the bread and butter issues for workers alone, but in engaging the more fundamental processes, including governance, that would affect the overall economy and therefore the welfare of workers. And so I envisage, one, an NLC that will have an economic program of contestation that is different from what is on the ground now. I see an NLC that would engage the political process through worker education so that workers realize that they have the ability to vote out bad leaders. There are some bad governors right now who are, doing all manners of things, attacking labor, doing illegal things and all those. Workers need to use their political numerical strength to vote out such, unperforming governors or senators or president or whoever. And we want an NLC, therefore, that will have a political machinery that it uses to advance the cause of our nation.
So in specific terms, to the worker?
To the worker?
Man, you are a worker.
Yes, you are. And we are all workers. We have charged ourselves as a first condition that please every worker must ensure that they have their permanent voter's card. That is just immediate to West next year, because that is our instrument to vote out some of these miscreants who are parading as politicians and who are not performing. That's one. Two, that workers must show interest in politics. As a worker, we want to charge people to come out, contest local government positions, do whatever they need in various political areas. And we need to put in place a political party base that will be able to advance as such. So these are things that we expect that workers must do individually and collectively.
Okay, now to the very last question. Do you think you're within the framework of the vision of the founding fathers of labor movement in Nigeria, looking beyond February 28, 1978?
Yeah, well, you see, every time, the broad vision, yes, but we must also agree that in every moment, the challenges that you deal with are different. And so you have that broad vision, and I think it is still the same. But the things you have to engage change from time to time. And therefore, you will find differences in style and in the content of the types of struggles that are then waged.
Thank you so much. It was nice talking with you. Pioneer First General Secretary of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Aliyu Dangiwa. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on Insight.
Thank you.
Also, Comrade Dr. Peter Ozoenson, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. And on behalf of all of us, wish you 40 years anniversary, a happy one. And moving on, we believe that NLC will be a lot better. No confrontations, but mutual understanding and discussions. Well, up next on Insight is the media review segment.